Welcome to the quick start tutorial for Covil, the Dark Overlords from Vesuvius Media, a fantasy-themed area control game by Luis Brueh. Up to 4 players can play, and each game includes a solo variant. The recommended age to play is 13 and up, and a typical game plays in 45 minutes. In Covil, the Dark Overlords, you and your friends are Dark Overlords trying to obtain minions and control the land. The goal of the game is to earn the most points. You do this by dominating the lands, defending your fortress, and gather powerful minions and artifacts. To set up a game of Covil, place the game board in the middle and face up on the side appropriate to the number of players playing the game. Take one rebel meeple and place it in the town. Place the rest of the rebels near the game board in easy reach. Give each player a player mat called the Champion Hall along with 1 HP token and 1 gold token. Place these tokens on the respective tracks starting with the 5 on the fortress and treasury. Next, give 5 henchmen of the same color and place each one on an empty slot on their Champion Hall. Also, players gather all 5 of their color meeples to be placed near them along with their fortress token. Then, deal the Dark Overlord to each player and have them sit on the player's evil throne. Return the remaining Dark Overlords back to the box. Place all the exhaustion tokens near the board. Shuffle the power relic cards and deal out 2 to each player. To ready the mercenary deck, begin by shuffling it. Then set aside 24 mercenary cards and return the rest to the box. Draw 6 and place them in a row to create the mercenary pool. If at this time any mercenary with a value of 10 appears, draw a new one and replace it. Shuffle the 10 value mercenaries back to the mercenary deck. The youngest player takes the Evil Scepter, the first player token, and the game begins. There are a total of 4 rounds called days that take place, and each day is divided into 3 main phases: morning, afternoon, and night. After the 4th day, the game ends, final scoring takes place, and the winner is determined. During the morning phase, players will place the proper number of meeples according to the current day. For the very first day, starting with the first player, each will place a fortress side up on one of the 4 corners of the board that's not already occupied. Then, they will add 2 of their meeples on the same space. As the game goes, minions may be removed, meaning the player will put out more minions in future rounds. The different days indicate the maximum number of troops that can be on the board for each player. For example, on the 3rd day, if the red player only has 1 troop on the board, they will place 3 troops in the space where their fortress is located. The afternoon is where most of the fun takes place. There are 3 different actions that can be activated in any order of a player's turn. The option to acquire a minion, perform any amount of free actions, and lie down a troop to do a troop action. Several turns will be played out until all troops on the board are lying down. After that, move on to the night phase. Now let's talk about acquiring a minion. This is an optional step and requires the player to exchange gold in order to obtain it. A player may use gold from their treasury, use the value of the power relics in their hand, and the value of minions in your champion hall in order to pay the cost of the minion. It's important to note the player can only have up to 5 minions at one time, so it's ideal to exchange the unwanted minion. When acquiring a minion, the player chooses an available minion from the mercenary pool. From there, they choose the combination of gold, power relics, and 1 or more minions to exchange to pay for the costs. If you overpaid, send the difference back to your treasury. Anytime a minion arrives in your champion hall, they come tired. Minions that are exhausted or tired cannot attack or do instant abilities. Each minion has an ability effect that is described on the lower portion of the card. There are 4 different types of effects. Aftershock and Command are instant abilities which the minion will gain an exhaust token to use it. Reinforcements and Influence are passive abilities and have persistent effects and are still in effect even when the minion is exhausted or tired. The influence ability type are usually ongoing, non-combat related effects giving the player special advantages. In many cases, the player's Dark Overlords are considered to be minions as well, from activating abilities to attacking with them. The other abilities will be explained later. There are two actions that players can freely perform under turns: exhausting minions to perform command abilities and activating power relics. When performing command abilities, choose a minion that has a command effect and place an exhaust token, covering up the icon on the top right. Some of the advantages command abilities can give are moving troops and putting exhaust tokens on enemy minions. The other free action that can be taken is playing power relics. These cards can give an edge when played at the right moment. While power relics can be gained in different ways, the only time a player can use it is on their turns or when defending themselves from attacks. A player may hold onto any number of power relics in their hand and may play as many of them on their turn. Each power relic has a gold value that can be discarded to use to acquire minions. There is also an instant ability that is immediately activated when the card is used, and it gives a troop bonus for either attacking or defending. This terrain symbol here is only used in a solo game and is ignored in a 2, 3, and 4 player games. There are 3 different ways to obtain power relics. Get one by destroying an enemy fortress, raid the central town during the night, or by trading 3 coins to draw 1 off the top of the deck. Trading in coins for relics can be performed as many times and at any time in any round. All players keep their inactive power relics secret from other players. Activated power relics go straight to the discard pile at the end of each night. On each of their turns, players with a standing troop meeple must lie one down and perform one of the following troop actions. Moving a troop will move the same troop meeple to an adjacent zone. Some minions may even give a boost to movement on certain terrain from their reinforcement abilities. A card like this means as long as there's a troop on this terrain, it can move 1 extra space. Resting speeds up the exhausted and tired process of a minion so they can be activated sooner. After a player lies down a troop, they can select a minion with an exhaust token and flip it to the tired side, or remove a tired token. Repairing a fortress is easy. After a player lies down a troop, they heal up their fortress by 1 hit point. The same is done with money, in which the player gains a gold. Finally, it's time to attack. There are 2 ways to attack an enemy troop. Doing attacks in the same zone are melee attacks, and doing attacks to adjacent zones are range attacks. To perform an attack, the player must lie down the troop they want to attack with and also must exhaust a minion. They select an enemy minion to target. The outcome of the attack is determined by finding and comparing both the attacker and defender's strength. At this point, the defender may exhaust a defensive minion to use its base defense strength. Then, they can activate any number of power relics from their hand, gaining both the strength bonuses and effects. However, effects that may move a troop meeple, melee or range, cannot be applied to the 2 troops currently in battle. The attacker may also respond by playing any number of power relics. This goes back and forth until both players pass. To determine the strength of the attacker, add up all the strength value of the current type of combat. This includes any applicable base stats of the exhausted minion, reinforcement abilities of the minions of the players including exhausted ones, and any active power relics the player controls this turn. The reinforcement ability can only be applied to ones that give the strength bonus for terrain type the troop is currently on. Also note, each troop has a defense melee strength of 1. For the defender, add up the defense strength of reinforcement that is in the correct type, power relics, and base stats if the minion was exhausted. Troops also have a default melee defense of 1. If a minion has an aftershock ability, it will activate once it attacks and receives an exhaust token, gaining any bonuses it has. There are 3 outcomes in every attack. If there's a tie, or if the defender wins by having a greater strength, the defender wins. The attacker wins and receives 1 gold for having a greater strength than the defender. If the defender's troop was standing, then lie it down and the owner moves it to an adjacent zone. Reinforcement abilities may be applied to this movement. If the defender loses and their troop is lying down, it is removed from the board instead. Extra damage from the attacker may be applied to the defender's fortress if it's in the same zone to a losing troop. The difference of the value of the attacker's and defender's strength is applied to the fortress even if the defender has extra troops in the same zone. The damage is dealt accordingly to the player's fortress health on their player's mat. Dealing any amount of damage rewards the attacker with a gold, and destroying it rewards the attacker with a power relic from the deck. Of course, on a later turn, the player may repair hit points to the fortress as long as it wasn't destroyed. A player with a destroyed fortress flips it to show it's in ruin. The player continues the game as normal and is still able to summon new troops on their zone. Keeping your fortress intact yields 5 extra victory points for final scoring. During night, the last phase of the round, all players proceed to do the following. First, all players discard any active power relics. Second, discard all minions in the mercenary pool and replace them with 6 new ones. Third, determine dominance and collect the protection fee for each terrain type. For each of the 4 different terrain types on the board, players earn 2 gold for controlling the most zones of each type. This only counts for the dominance of the type of land, not individual zones. The player who has the majority troop of the type of terrain gains 2 coins. Neither fortresses nor rebels are counted for the protection fee. No rewards are given to multiple players who tied. Here's an example. Yellow has dominance in water because yellow controls the most water zones. No player controls the zone because yellow's fortress doesn't count. Both green and yellow tie for one zone, but yellow solely controls this water zone. Fourth, Raid the Town has any player with their troops in the central town loot 4 power relic cards. For each troop they control in the town, they draw 1 power relic from the deck. This will add a rebel meeple to the city for each power relic drawn. When the 5th rebel is placed, the rebels retaliate. After all players get their power cards, each troop in the town and each standing fortress is targeted with an attack strength of 3 from the rebels. Fortresses can only be defended if a player controls a troop in their zones. Retaliations can only occur once per day, and after each retaliation, the rebels are removed from the board. Finally, all minions rest. Exhausted tokens are flipped to the tired side, then if on the tired side, simply remove the tired token and return it to the supply, and the minions will be ready for the player's command in the next day. Remember, at the beginning of each round, all troop meeples on the board stand back up. After the 4th and final night, the game ends and the victory points are tallied up. To find your final score, add the gold from your treasury. Next, add 5 victory points if your fortress is still standing. Then add up all the values of all your minions. Any influence abilities remain active and is still applied to final scoring. Lastly, add up all the gold value of all the power relics in your hand as victory points. The player with the most points is the winner of Covil. If a tie occurs, victory is given to the player with the most troop meeples on the board, then to the player with the most hit points on their fortress, then to the most gold in their treasury, and finally the player who owns the most expensive minion. If there's still a tie, then the players share the victory. This concludes the quick start tutorial to Covil, the Dark Overlords. To find more information about this game and others from Vesuvius Media, please visit vesuviusmedia.com. I personally like to give special thanks to Luis Brueh and Vesuvius Media for sponsoring this tutorial. Please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more upcoming tutorials and reviews of all things board gaming. I'm the Garbage Stacker, thanks for watching, and remember to keep on stacking games.